Well, Bishop, here we are using the tool,
Yes.
Catholic radio.
Yes. Well, it's a vision come true. It's been a long-term vision. I want to thank Kevin and all the others who worked so hard to bring Catholic radio to begin with. And as we know, that's been quite a journey. But Mary's watched over it, and St. Joseph has been protector through it all. And then to be able to do a live programming now, which is local, is a great, great gift. And I'm humbled to be able to be part of it.
And I love this very first one that we have. It comes from an age 11-year-old young lady, Celia, who is a student at Christ the King Elementary School. And her question to you, Bishop, is how much time do you spend praying each day?
Not enough. Obviously, prayer should be part of the fullness of our day. I begin my prayer before I even get out of bed. And I say, I thank God for this day that's before me and for protecting me during the night that I may take advantage of the gift of this day. Then I spend an hour in the chapel in the bishop's house doing the liturgy hours, part of the obligatory prayers that we have, but also praying the rosary, some spiritual reading, some quiet time. And then if I am not celebrating Mass some other place that day, I celebrate Mass in my own personal chapel. And then during the day, various times, very briefly, I begin most meetings with prayer. And then times during the day, I stop and thank God for a blessing that I received or ask Mary to help me get through this challenging moment. So it's a continuing, and I hope that we can encourage people to make prayer not just a time that we set aside, but a continual presence in our days.
And maybe that's a different way of thinking about it for some people. They go to Mass on Sunday and then, move on with their life, as we might say. But prayer has to be a part of that.
It sustains us and encourages us and gives us hope, even though we have to deal with whatever the challenges of our day. It roots us that we have a God who loves us. We have the Son who died and rose for us, and the Spirit given to us to strengthen us. And so it gives perspective to some of the more challenging moments of our lives.
Now, that question was from an 11-year-old. Does it change as is your answer in the sense, can we all use that, or does prayer change as we age?
Well, one of the beautiful elements of the church, and is, I'm a convert, and I didn't appreciate it before I became a Catholic, and that is the variety of spiritualities. There are just a multitude of prayer forms, prayer styles, prayer approaches, as long as they're grounded in the church and in Jesus Christ, appeal to different people and at different times. I knew a couple of sisters, elderly sisters, and one of them loved the rosary, just prayed the rosary. And the other one found the rosary so boring she just couldn't pray it. And the other sister said, I'm going to pray her into heaven with the rosary whether she likes it or not. So there are a lot of wonderful things, a variety that speak to us. And as we age or we have experiences, different things touch us. Mm-hmm. But all focus on the same thing, and that is maintaining that relationship with Jesus.
It can change with the circumstances of our life. Sometimes in illness, it may be more difficult to pray for some people. Lots of factors can come into play.
Sometimes it can be prayers that are familiar, that we repeat over and over again, kind of routine. Other times, just silence is a powerful, powerful prayer. Music can be prayer. It certainly is prayer. And so there are a lot of different ways that touch us when it's important. I think the Spirit helps us figure out what's the appropriate prayer. Mm-hmm. And I talked to the little girl at school. I was over Christ the King not too long ago, and so I appreciate what they do there. Beautiful, beautiful, and integrating prayer into all aspects of school, as do all of our Catholic schools.
I was going to say, Bishop, that's one of the blessings of the diocese, that we have a Catholic education, not only in Sioux Falls, but throughout the diocese in Yankton and Mitchell and Aberdeen, plus Watertown, a number of other places where we do have either Catholic grade school and high school, obviously elementary. What a blessing that is for our diocese as we continue to try to teach and keep our children on the right path.
Absolutely, and it happens only because of the sacrifice of so many. Those who run the schools, the teachers who don't earn as much as other they might, the benefactors, the families who sacrifice in order to provide tuition. But it's a beautiful vision, it's a beautiful witness, because it is integrating the fullness of faith into every aspect, in math and science and in the extracurricular activities. It's not just segmented to one piece. And so the idea, of course, is to build the full person, and always thinking that our goal is not simply to get a job or get a degree, but to receive eternal life by living balanced lives.
That leads me into a question that a listener sent into us, Bishop, and it starts out saying, there's an old saying, our children are our future. What can we do as parents to keep our young children engaged in our faith when there's so much outside pressure to be anti-religious these days?
First of all, live it ourselves. We can say a lot to kids. We try to talk to them, teach them, but if we aren't witnessing it ourselves, evidencing it, somebody said, the old line was, I'd rather see a sermon than hear it any day. And so the first thing parents can do is to live the faith fully themselves, because kids watch everything we do and model in hopefully in good ways. But so the first thing is to have that joy, that faith, but also then be attentive to where the kids are and what's coming at them. So many influences, many of them not healthy these days, and so it's important for parents to know what's going on in the lives of their children, and not only create the framework, but explain to the children why these elements are important, or why these things are unhealthy, and so develop a personal relationship. I know it's not easy with as busy as everybody is. Frankly, many children's lives, the kids are busier than the parents these days with all the athletics and all the other things going on, which are beautiful in their own way, but can get in the way of maintaining that relationship.
The why seems to me such an important part of that. And again, to me, that brings us back to Catholic Radio as a tool to help the adults understand the why, because sometimes as parents, we don't understand the why.
Exactly, and formation is an ongoing. We don't just go to religious education, then get confirmed and it's over, or we ought not anyway. Mm-hmm. Many do. Pope Francis, as I mentioned, my confirmation homilies, said a few months ago that the sacrament of confirmation no longer exists for some. It's a sacrament of farewell. Once you've confirmed, then it's over and you go out. Well, we need to to be enriched and formed and explained in the way that's effective in our day, the truths which never change. And Catholic Radio obviously is a great gift for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we should mention we are in a live edition of The Shepherd's Voice with Bishop Paul Swain on the Lamb Catholic Radio. Kevin, the two stations now.
We've got two. We're listening in the Ipswich, Aberdeen area on KSJP 88.9 FM. In the Sioux Falls, Hartford, Mitchell, and Yankton areas on KSTJ 91.3. And we're proud to announce that we have purchased another license for the Watertown, Brookings, Huron, Madison areas. So we'll have a little overlap there with KTUT. And we're looking at a potential startup date in the fall of 2014. So we're really excited about having that. And also, maybe more exciting is the fact that today our new mobile apps have been released. And for the people that have Apple products, you can go to the Apple App Store, type in Lamb Radio, and you can get the free download so that you can take Catholic Radio with you wherever you go. And for Android users, it's the Google Store. Same thing, type in Lamb Radio. So we're very excited to be able to continue the evangelization in those areas. As Bishop said earlier, technology has changed so much that it can bring so many more people now into the flock.
Absolutely. Kevin, thanks for that. Again, if you have a question for Bishop this morning, you can call or email.
Yep, you can call it to 605-275-4659. Or you can email sue@lambradio.com, and we would love to have your questions for Bishop Swain this morning.
Well, one of the areas, Bishop, not surprisingly, that people continue to be interested in, and it's a topic you have spent an enormous amount of time on over the last many years, and particularly in the first part of this year, and that is the whole pastoral planning process. That, of course, has impact all across the diocese, something you're well aware of as you've traveled to practically every square inch of the diocese. Where are we at? How is it coming along?
Well, we've been recognizing the changes that are going on in our state and in our diocese for many years. At least 5 years we've had a formal process of pastoral planning. The changes are occurring in the sense that many of our rural areas, there are fewer and fewer people, fewer and fewer children, and it's affecting not just the church but also schools and businesses and all of that. There are also some growing areas like the Sioux Falls metropolitan area, and then there's a change in the number of priests available. There was a time when about a third of our parishes were served by religious order priests, Benedictines, Franciscans, Jesuits, others. Now there are just a couple of priests from religious orders who are serving. And many of them, of the religious orders, because they don't have vocations in sufficient numbers, have pulled back to their homes. And so when that happens, the diocese has to basically take over, is not the good word, but assume responsibility for those parishes. And so how do you manage all that? We established early on certain goals. The first goal was to do as best we can to make sure that the Holy Eucharist and all the sacraments, but especially the Holy Eucharist, is available to all in the diocese as best we can. Our diocese is 35,000 square miles, all of eastern South Dakota. It's a big area. So that's, how do we do that, managing the changes that are there? Also, assure that that faith formation is available, and frankly, technology is allowing us to do that in new ways, and I think Catholic Radio is going to be very helpful in achieving the goal of sharing formation opportunities in ways we haven't been before. Thirdly is that people can come together as families in vibrant and vital parishes to be with one another in the good times and to share the joys, but also support one another in those challenging times. Doing all of those three things, which is not easy to do, while also taking into account the physical and spiritual health and well-being of our priests. We are a Eucharistic church. We need priests to be able to celebrate the Eucharist. And so we have to take into account priests are individuals, different ages and different gifts, and so we can't just fill slots. We need to be attentive to their presence. And so those are the general goals. How we've gone about it, particularly more recently, is that with a lot of advice from a lot of people, we've sent out to all the people of our diocese, a personal letter to every household. This is what we're thinking of doing in your area, to merge parishes if that's necessary. What do you think? Are there other ways we can deal with it? And so we had 8 listening sessions throughout the diocese, very well attended, a lot of letters and emails and things. And then we came to the conclusion, this is the plan that we're going to go forward with. And so we announced that just a few months ago. And frankly, I've been, as hard as it is, it's very hard for me too. I mean, to merge parishes, and though those buildings are important to us, they're part of our family life, baptisms, weddings, special occasions, even the cemeteries are very important to us, and we will maintain all of those. So I've been pleased that most people have recognized the reality of what's going on with demographics, with financial elements, with the condition of some of our churches. So it's been received in a way that with great Christian charity, even though obviously there's some sadness to it all. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I want to assure people, as I have in the past, that even though there may not be regular Mass at a church building, the church building is still available for special occasions or for regular prayer. That's the right of Catholics who have built them and maintained them. So it's a work in progress, and obviously change continues to go, so we'll look at it. But I've tried to do it in a way so we don't have to go through this heaviness again for a while in a major way.
The implementation of this now, I guess probably that's the stage that's occurring right now, where the mergers actually start to happen. That's also a hard step, I suspect.
It is, and it's but we're working with the people. We go out and sit with the people and help them decide how those changes are going to be implemented. The hardest change, of course, is mass times, because people are used to mass times, and there obviously have to be some adjustments, but we'll work this through.
Mm-hmm.
People of goodwill want what's best for everyone, and so, but there are challenges ahead, certainly.
You talked about the health of the priests and trying to help them, I guess, help themselves in a way. Some are very willing to do probably more than they should for their own well-being. There are some parameters then that come with that, and actually this falls into a question that one of our listeners had in terms of the number of masses that a priest can say on a weekend.
The norm is that a priest celebrate 3 masses, including the Saturday vigil mass. Canon law allows one more if there's good reason to do so. And so healthier priests are able to do that for a while, but the norm is no priest should be expected to celebrate more than 3. He can on his own decide to do so if he feels it's serving the people in that way. So but again, I've celebrated 4 masses, and I can tell you by the time of the 4th mass, I'm not sure I used the words of consecration.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't simply going through the motions of a meeting. We're instruments of Christ, and the grace flows through us, and it's a beautiful thing, but it's also, not quite the word, but it does something to us. It's a powerful thing. The grace is just overwhelming, and so we don't want to just become mechanical. We want the priest, when he prays the Mass, to really pray it, not simply repeat words. And so, obviously, there's some give and take depending upon the areas and what else is going on in the lives of priests. But it isn't just Sunday Masses, of course. In many places, there are funerals, there are weddings, nursing homes. I mean, there's just a lot of expectation on our priests. And so they're very sacrificial. It's amazing. And the driving that some of them have to do is just quite phenomenal. So we try to balance all of that.
And you've talked also about, and this is another question that came into us, that, maybe some priests have said, gee, I can't do 4. I really can only do 3. And you've talked about priests not being numbers. They're more than that. And they're individuals who have particular gifts and talents and strengths and weaknesses.
That's right. And when we make assignments, we try to match as best we can. This priest has these gifts. This parish, at this point, has these needs. And so we try to do best we can, but obviously it doesn't, there's never a perfect fit because we're all always changing. The priests also have confessions and religious education. There's a lot on their plate. And so I just ask people to pray for their priests, support them, even if some of the changes that are made are hard. It's for the overall good of everyone. And I think when this is done, we'll be a stronger diocese. There'll be stronger parishes with greater vitality and life around us, and we'll be more of a family.
Through the implementation process, I would guess all kinds of things will be looked at. Maybe alternate weekend masses or change in the schedule, which allows a different kind of combination of masses. All of that could be on the table at the local level.
Absolutely. This is a consultation process. How you deal with it in this particular area, we want to serve the people. We want the people to be served well and be part of those decisions. And so it may work one place to alternate masses, other places maybe not, because of distance or something. That's really a local decision. We're not imposing from above, other than within the general parameters that we need to maintain, which is under church law, as well as one of my roles as bishop is to watch out for the health of our priests.
And as you went through all of these meetings around the diocese, was this sort of thing raised frequently? People tried to express their thoughts about some of these things?
Well, of course, and what most people would do, and I would too, is we want to maintain what we're doing in our parish.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went out and I said, this is what I'm thinking of doing, some people came forward with some reasons why that may not work or what another way of doing it, and I changed my plan as a result of listening to the people. And we'll continue to do that through this consultation process.
Absolutely. So, Kevin, another question?
Yeah, Bishop, we just had an individual call in on her smartphone. She's listening this morning. And her question is, can a deacon manage a parish and then just have a priest come for a mass on the weekends? And the follow-up question to that is, can women become deacons?
Deacons, let me answer the second one. Women cannot become deacons. It's an ordained life and an ordained order, and so the Romans made clear that that's not an option. Deacons can administer a parish, and I'd love to have more deacons available to do that, which is removing the administrative side. Priests would in an instant give up the administrative side of a parish if they could, the finances and all of that, which is maintaining buildings. None of us went to seminary to become maintenance people at parishes. So yes, that can be done, and it has happened on occasion. The challenge is most deacons have jobs outside, unless they finally retire. And so they managing the two things together is very difficult, and they have families, many of them, and so that's an option we will be open to. The right deacon comes forward and is able to maintain it in the way that is possible. Yep.
Very good. All right. And kind of playing into this question and some of the others, or another question we had received in advance is, Bishop, how do you decide when it's time for a priest to move? What are some of the factors that play into those decisions? And I know another area where you end up spending a lot of time working on priest personnel.
Priest personnel is one of the hardest responsibilities that I feel as a bishop. Caring about the priest, caring about the parish, caring about the needs, which are always greater than we can possibly fulfill. As a general rule, I try to allow a priest to stay in a parish at least 6 years. It takes a few years to get to know the people, for the people to get to know the priest, and to have an influence other than just carrying on what was going on before. Then after that, we kind of look at it to see, after 10 or 12 years, it's probably important that the priests move on, both for the spiritual vitality of the priest and for the parish. But things happen that requires an adjustment at different times. So we want some stability, but then adapting to the needs of the priest, the needs of the parish, and the needs of the diocese. So
That sounds like quite a jigsaw puzzle.
I spend a lot of time on my knees when I do priest
We're back to the prayer question again.
That's right.
Exactly right. Any other questions,
We do.
Kevin, that you have
Yep.
from call-ins? Or
Yeah, we do. We've got a question, Bishop, that says, with the population growing rapidly in Sioux Falls, are there plans to start new parishes?
In fact, the answer is yes. We had a study committee as part of the whole overall planning process to see whether there's a need for a new parish. And their conclusion was, which I, taking all the statistics, looking at what development is expected down the line, that there probably is a need for a new parish in the southern Sioux Falls, Harrisburg area. And so this next year, and I've actually decided that if we have one, which will be needed eventually, we're going to call it St. John Paul II Parish. So this year we're going to look to see how we can begin that process to be sure there are enough people who want to be part of that to form the parish. If there isn't, then we may have to wait a few years, but there certainly is a need in the next few years. It takes 3 or 4 years to make it happen. So we're beginning the process. There may be, who knows, over time in some other area, but
It's sort of fascinating, isn't it, that you're dealing with both ends of that spectrum at the same time. Some might find that, hard to believe, and yet it makes perfect sense if you really think through the numbers
Right.
of how our state has, in a sense, evolved to this point.
well, when I go out and people admit it, that there are fewer young people who stay in some of the smaller communities, and but their grandparents are there, or their parents are there. Well, many of them have moved to Sioux Falls in this area, so we're still serving the fullness of the family as best we can. And we will. Ultimately, it's in God's hands, and so we just make the best decisions we can.
Bishop, we talked about the size of the diocese, 35,000 square miles, and the fact that you get out to pretty much all of those miles over the course of time. There may be things that you have seen in this diocese that folks that have lived here all of their lives haven't seen, impressions maybe that you have gathered. What do you notice as you travel across the miles of eastern South Dakota?
Certainly the influence of the land, of nature, of the reliance on things out of one's control. And that goes deep in family life, in farming and ranching, and in some of the other new areas of development in business and other areas. And that is that we can manage the best we can with our gifts, but there's some things that are just beyond our control. Some years it's flooding, some years it's drought, some years it's hard winters, like this past one we just been through. And so there's a certain humility that comes with saying we can't control it all, even though our human natures would like to try, and we do try in some ways. So that sense of humility and expectation that God's really ultimately in charge is deep-seated here in South Dakota and in our diocese, and that's just moves me in a way that perhaps I haven't in other places that I've been.
It's an expression of faith, then.
Absolutely. Faith. We trust God's will, God's way. We can have a year of real challenge this year. 2 years from now, the blessings are so great we just are overwhelmed by them. So it's having faith, trusting God's will and God's way.
And we're in the planting season.
We're in the planting season. So beautiful to drive out now and see all the green and the fields plowed up, and it's uplifting.
Yeah, absolutely it is. It kind of brings me back to that, and I hate to use the word divide because that's not where I want to go with this, but the sense of misunderstanding perhaps that sometimes exists between the urban community and the rural community, the Sioux Falls and the not Sioux Falls. I'm sure you see that as you go around the diocese. What are things that as church we can do to help heal some of that?
One thing is to recognize that we are one. That we're one family. You know, when when the disciples asked Jesus, "Teach us to pray," he taught us the Our Father, which has not a single I or a my in it. It's us and our. We're together, and so we need to recognize it isn't us against them. We're all one. Obviously, there are differences, and one of the things that I learned during the planning process was those who outside think Sioux Falls area gets special attention. Some in Sioux Falls don't know what's going on in the other areas of the diocese and think there's too much attention in the other way. Neither are fully accurate, but it's natural. It isn't unique to South Dakota or our diocese. When I was a priest in Madison and vicar general, Madison was some viewed as a favorite and the outlying area not. And then the reverse was also true given the amount of time a bishop spends out of the city. And so it's human nature. It's within families too. I think they're probably, in our own family, some feel that they're specially treated, others. But as long as we remember we are family and that it is Christ Church, not any one of ours, we can deal with it.
Maybe the word you used before, humility, is a pretty essential component of trying to address that.
And the fact is, we need everybody. We need what's going on in the urban area of Sioux Falls. We need what's going on in the rural areas, and they complement each other. And we need to sustain it as best we can.
Absolutely.
And care about one another, particularly when challenging things happen.
The truth be told, most of us, many of us, maybe not most, many of us are probably no more than one generation removed from the farm, and I'll raise my hand on that one as well because I know how much farming has changed, and yet in my heart, I'm still I'm still a farm boy.
Right.
So I think it's probably true for a lot of us. Kevin, another question is...
We do have one, and I just want to reiterate that this is a special edition of the Shepherd's Voice. We're honored to have Bishop Swain in studios here at the Lamb Catholic Radio Network. And again, if you would like to call in a question for Bishop Swain, you can do so by dialing 605-275-4659, or you can email your question to sue@lambradio.com. This is a caller, Bishop, that just called in, and it has to did do with the planning. The question is it possible that the bishop might change? I think this is a generic question, Bishop. Is it possible that the bishop might change the two parishes that are being merged with a different parish? So is the plan changeable?
If a good case can be made, I'm open to it. I told, not immediately, I wouldn't think we got to see how things go. But if it doesn't work over time, then we need to adjust. I mean, that's just the fact. And so, obviously, there needs to be a very good reason. There needs to be a finality so people can become comfortable with the way it is, even though it may not be exactly how one might like.
I think it's a good point that you say that you've got to let the initial plan play out to some degree so that you can then take a look at and have the vision to be able to see, okay, the potential changes could come in this area.
There are two elements of that relationship. One is what we call linking, and that is independent parishes that are served by one priest. And there can be 2 or 3, even some places 4 parishes in that. Others are when they are merged, which means that a parish is a geographic area. And so when the parishes are merged, it's a bigger geographic area. It includes the area of both of the parishes. The buildings remain. The building's name remains the same, and they can be used in varying ways depending upon the local situation.
I think that the definition, maybe could you describe that, Bishop, when you say linkage and priests serving that versus merging of parishes? I think there might be some confusion, and I've heard some of that just in my parish presentations. In some of the smaller communities, they're having a tougher time understanding that verbiage.
Well, the world is divided into geographic areas, and the dioceses and then parishes within each of the dioceses. Every parish is a geographic area that may have a church in it or not. Some of them in the past haven't even had a church. They've met in people's homes and things. So it's a geographic area. So when Parish A, which is one geographic area, and Parish B, which is a second geographic area, are merged, then there's one parish that includes the full geographic area. As I say, within those areas, there still can be 2 buildings, and the 2 buildings that can be used if they can be maintained. What a linkage is it doesn't expand the geographic area. Parish A remains in its area, Parish B remains, but they're served by one priest. One has the priest is resident there, and the other isn't. We've had linkages for years and years. We've had mergers for many years. In the history of the diocese, and we're going to celebrate our 125th next year, over 200 parishes have grown up, served well, and then been merged because of changes like the railroad or the Dust Bowl or other things. So this is not anything new, although it's very hard. And I understand how people have a difficult understanding it, because I sometimes have a hard time explaining it myself. But you work it through, and that's why we have local meetings to sit down and talk it through. This is what it really means to you personally.
Very good. Great. Appreciate the call-ins and the questions that are coming in. Bishop, as we look to the next month or so, exciting to note that we have a couple of ordinations this year coming up.
Yes, well, we have one deacon ordination and one priesthood ordination. We have 2 next year. One of the good news, it's always good news, of course, everyone is beautiful. So far already this year, we have 10 men entering the seminary.
Wow.
This fall. So God's blessing us in a way as we go through. And so So we're adjusting with the loss of the religious order priests. God's blessing us with diocesan priests. We've always done pretty well, better than many dioceses our size. And so, but this year is just, so contribute to the seminarian fund. We need the support.
Absolutely. So I just want to push on that just a little bit, Bishop. 10 and of course they need to go through the discernment. It doesn't mean they're automatically going to be priests, but that's a sizably larger number than typical.
It is, and some of them are college level, and so they have 8 years to go, and some have graduated from college, and they have 5 or 6 years depending upon their background. Before, not all, and only about really half who enter college reach it to ordination, but the formation is a beautiful process, and they become good lay leaders as a result of it, and you're an example yourself. So it's so we'll see, but it's encouraging, and it says there's a healthy spirituality among our young, and I'm very impressed with what's going on among those in the 18 to 30. There's a yearning, a searching, and an activity, and frankly, the media is very helpful to that, because you can go listen to the radio and go on the internet, and there's so many resources there. So it isn't simply dependent upon sitting in class or something. So it's very encouraging.
Bishop, how important is that for those callings with the focus groups now on college campuses, not only in our diocese but across the country? But more specifically, we are blessed to have 3 Newman Centers in our diocese at the University of South Dakota with Father Jeff Norfolk, and then again at South Dakota State with Father Andrew Dickinson, and at Northern State with Father Tom Anderson. And that's got to be a powerful tool to help with some of that discernment, or just the introduction of what it is, what we're about.
Absolutely. We also have a campus minister at Dakota, so it works particularly with the Newman Center in Brookings to provide. So, and it's one of my priorities to recognize that's an age group where we need to be present. There's so many forces. I call the Newman Centers the oasis in the midst of secularism on the campus, on the public campuses, and they're flourishing in part because of Focus, which is a peer-related ministry. So those who graduate from college commit to 1 or 2 years as a missionary for Christ on college campuses, and they have prayer group study, scripture study. They go out, and it's about the same age, and therefore can relate in ways that I certainly can't. And it's been very, very engaging and uplifting, and that's where some of our seminarians who are coming forward now, they're on fire. And we also have Why Disciple and some other elements going on, which is that same type of peer presence to encourage. I want to share the joy I feel in Jesus Christ with you, so you can experience that joy too. And it's beginning to bear fruit.
One of the things I note is the homegrown, and not that there's anything wrong with people moving to South Dakota and sharing their talents, but I look at our own youth office, Bishop, and both Eric Gallagher and Emily Hoffman, products of the kind of thing that you're talking about.
Exactly.
That really means something, I think.
And I think that what I talked about earlier about the land and the humility and the faith that represents, once they bring that with them as South Dakotans, and then when they actually engage and encounter Jesus Christ personally, the fire begins, and then it spreads, and it's a good fire, not some of the things that we've experienced. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it is. And then, as we said, it bears fruit ultimately in ordinations. The 5th and 6th of June, I believe, deacon ordination on one day and priesthood ordination on the next. Melvin Kuhn will be ordained a priest on that day. Grant Lacey, a permanent or a transitional deacon, the day before. So great opportunities to celebrate where we are at. So,
and I invite people to come to those, because there's something that happens at ordinations that touches people's hearts. Not that you're going to be called to the priesthood, but it reinforces the faith, and you see these men commit to a life that is countercultural. They're courageous in many ways to make such a commitment in our day and age with all the secularism and the challenges that are there. But so I invite people to come and experience that great joy.